one belt, one road. You have all this money going all over the place, and now's the time. I think if you try to confront China in 10 years, it'd be too late. But now is probably a good time for the United States to do this.
All right, so Trump as savior. He coming in just at the end of the possible nick of time to save and reindustrialize America. Sounds like a good re-election campaign. So, Dan, tell us about the Belt and Road Initiative and what the impact of that might be. So just a quick synopsis there. This is the idea of kind of the new Silk Road, right? They're going to go all over Asia, connect Russia, China with this huge new trading geo area outside of the traditional. Can you give us some fill-in on that, Dan?
This is China's challenge to the IMF, the World Bank. You know, they created the Asian Infrastructure Bank, $100 billion. That's funding this new Silk Road, also the Maritime Road. This is about locking in all of China's neighbors into their infrastructure and technological footprint. You know, they build the bridges, the ports, the roads, the rail. They come in and build the telecom network. That gets you in with Huawei or ZTE. It's all about getting as many countries into their sphere of influence. And there's many more countries now trade dependent on China than they are the United States. So this is their geopolitical strategy to, you know, grow their country outside their own borders.
You know, Dan, back in 1980s, 1989, thereabouts, I was working on Wall Street, and the theme of the day was that Japan was going to take over the world, and that real estate in Tokyo was skyrocketing, and America was becoming a vassal state to the Japanese miracle. And then Japan crashed, and they've been in a deflationary 20-year period. Is it similar with China? You know, China was touted as going to be the market of the 21st century, that they were going to take over the world. It seems like now the rubber has hit the road and maybe not so much. Is there a parallel there, Dan?
Well, I think this is the time that'll tell. I remember the Japanese comparison as well. I would say China has, for every one Japanese citizen, there's 20 Chinese. So it's a much larger scale we're talking about. If you look at the reality of the real economy, they have kind of taken over the world. They're by far number one in most markets in the world. You know, they build more steel in 6 weeks than U.S. does all year. Their car market's twice as large. Will they continue this growth path? If they continue on the growth path they have now, absolutely they'll dominate the world. Chinese have cities now with GDPs that are the size of European countries. Dalian, the GDP of Dalian is bigger than Finland. The GDP of Hangzhou is bigger than Sweden. The GDP of Wuhan is bigger than Greece. So this is a $13 trillion economy, but it's grafted onto a 1930s political system. And I think that is its weakness. And if now is the time, in world history where it will fork off, it'll by far be the number one power in 10 years, or they could stagnate and follow kind of the Japanese model.
All right, Dan, what is China 2025, and why is there so much trepidation the government to talk about China 2025? What is it?
Well, Made in China 2025 is Chinese industrial policy to get everything localized within Chinese companies, high-tech products that they still can't do today. A lot of those are on high-end chips, little high-end semiconductor testing equipment. They're pouring huge amounts of money in EV, electrical vehicles, and electrical vehicle batteries. So it's basically just an industrial policy. I don't blame them for that. I don't think we should criticize them for that. It's common, makes good sense for every nation to do that. China doesn't like to talk about it. There's a Chinese saying that hide your strengths and bide your time, and that's what they're doing with trying to put the silence on Made in China 2025 in the press.
Right. So in other words, like a product like Apple, it's designed in California, built in China. They want to get in on some of that design dollars and be original and get the entire dollar from every bit of the ecosystem. But I want to move on to some in the Trump administration are claiming China is behind the scenes trying to ruin the North Korean deal. So is this the beginning of some anti-China propaganda that usually leads to isolation when applied against others, etc.? I've not heard of this. Have you heard of this? Tell us more, Dan.
Well, I think we talked last time on North Korea. They're 90% trade dependent on China. China is the puppet master of the whole North Korean peace. Wouldn't surprise me if they try to throw that in with their negotiations. But I don't think anyone has any real proof of it. So we'll have to see how that goes along.
Right. So at the moment, though, at what point how long can the Chinese government kind of keep the lid on the fact that there's a major seismic change coming, and how much of an impact will this have on the average Chinese person?
Well, I think it depends on the job losses. I mean, it's quite interesting, Neil. So when Trump gave them restarted the ZTE with being able to buy the Qualcomm chips, I think people in the U.S. criticized that, but they didn't understand ZTE has 100,000 employees. So if you want a real trade war, you shut down a company that has 100,000 employees and put them out of work in one day. So these things need to be managed very carefully. So you have the ZTE example, but you have thousands of other factories that could go idle overnight. In the long run, it may be good for China. China is getting old very fast. In 10 years, they're going to be one of the oldest countries in the world. You already can't find factory workers. The Chinese industrial policy, what they have currently, makes no sense to keep building factories and export, building factories and export. It doesn't make sense. So there's incentive for China to come to the table and have both these large countries you call G1 and G2 work together. Will that actually happen, though, remains to be seen.